loss and waste. And for us, and for us here in South Africa, apologies for that. Um, the board member of the CGC. Okay. Okay. Cool. I'll track. So yeah, just briefly, the restrooms are located out the main entrance, all the way down the passage and to the left. There's a continuous tea and coffee station just outside the main doors here, so please feel free to grab a cuppa whenever you feel like it. Please remember to keep your mobile devices on silent, and yeah, please enjoy connecting with each other throughout the day. I Yes, sorry. There. So the Wi-Fi codes, um, codes the Wi-Fi available on your table. As there should also be a copy of the agenda. We will also project the agenda at some point on the far left projector, and then just a reminder that the consumer goods sort of the means that there shall be discussion of price, allocation of customers or products leaves. The group is drifting towards impermissible discussions. The topic shall be tabled, and the opinion of the legal team representative meeting or otherwise that and seem technical issues. I would like to introduce Nicole Roos. She is an advocate for sustainability and leadership, currently serving as the chairperson and managing director
colleagues in the room will attest that it's quality above all. In fact, that's how we begin many of our corporate meetings. Stand up and really commit that quality starts with us, and we take that. We're sharing with a colleague at my table this morning that we are very grateful as big corporate citizens bring that international policy our country to continent, and really things like global quality management systems help us really enhance what we bring not only to. We are also really fortunate that we work a lot with a lot of international collaboration. It's not one little effort here. It really takes a village to ensure that safety is at the heart of all of our operations. We are also really making good progress in good manufacturing practices and really taking analysis of various value chain across our manufacturing processes. I think across the company, the team was briefing me, it's almost staggering to think that in our company alone, we complete more than 100 million tests on the products that we put out into the marketplace in a year. Now, that value as coordination, that value chain requires very strong collaboration if we are to have common goals, and in particular, and more importantly, with a very low waste quotient. Across our network, we are also fortunate to have many of our sites on ISO 22000. We know as stable for us as we think about this important work. And I think what's really exciting is I'm seeing a lot of advancement in not only the safety health components, but also the environmental component are moving forward. And this particular about sustainably growing Southern Africa's agricultural streams and again, making an impact on the country's productivity. Food safety actually directly connects with sustainability. At the moment, I'm actually representing us as the co-chair in the B20 of the Sustainability and Food Alliance Network. And there we are obviously joined by almost 200 thought leaders across the globe, represented by the G and B20 nations. And we are really deliberating how not only do we grow agricultural streams efficiently and productivity-wise, really front and center, but that we do that with a lot of intentionality about regenerative agriculture, about new streams that create jobs, but sustainably, and that we are able obviously to give more back than we take out. So very much today about the interception point of waste and safety and sustainability, and that they are not individual topics that we're looking at in isolation of one another. I encourage you to also go, please, and read the recommendations on the B20 website. This is an amazing piece of work across the various eight task forces, and very happy, MEC, to see that together with agriculture, we are really forging ahead to drive an incredible agenda. Again, not a South African agenda, but an African agenda. And South Africa has a lot to say in putting the Global South indeed on the map when it comes to this important work. This day is also about partnership. We come as competitors in this room, but more importantly today, we come as alliances to deal with this topic on food waste. And these partnerships are absolutely essential. You think in a value chain, how many individuals touch one individual value chain? You put all of our value chains together, there is so much potential for responsible collaboration. South Africa still records an alarmingly high level of food. We're hearing numbers of 10 million tons. That is an insane going to bed unnourished in the early beginning. No single organization solve that on their own. Network and South Africa Food like CSIR and the BFAP, we've really brought very evidence-based recommendations to this field. And we're looking forward to today to really start to target certain hotspots spots across our country and also in the value chain where we are clearly not making enough progress, and we want to see an acceleration in action. Council, where obviously we are represented by industry, a lot of affiliation with farmers. We call together also civil society and indeed also regulators. This topic today, I think as industry, we really are calling for very common metrics that we can be held accountable to. And by ensuring common metrics, we will really then be able to indeed drive common goals. As we say in business, that which we measure is what we focus on. So we need the focus and we need the measurement. In fact, we are supporting a call for renewed measurement. We are also very, very excited at Nestlé that our role in preventing waste through the operation is not something that we hold close. Again, if there is best practice, particularly international best practice, we want to put that out, to the working committees, to the groups. Are there countries that are already doing this well that we can learn from, and again, bring those learnings back into South African soil? I think finally, we should think today that our work is through the value chain. I think you're hearing me say that a lot, right? It's not at the end of the value chain. It's about how we begin with forecasting, with planning. How do we bring accuracy and digitalization into today's conversation? That we are not only talking value chain that is efficient, but that we're also talking about safe redistribution of food where it is indeed needed and possible. And finally, when we have to dispose, we're doing that responsibly, again, as corporate connected citizens. We're also very fortunate today to have some of our redistribution partners with us, particularly at Nestlé. We are working with SA Harvest, and this also includes the Buckets of Nutrition initiative. So many incredible pieces of work happening across our country. Again, what could we learn from them? Can we scale them? Is there more we can do to make a sizable impact, particularly when it comes to surplus food that should really be with families, that should be in their kitchens, it should be in their homes rather than in landfills. And again, we can be doing more. Personally, and braving this morning on that hectic rain highway, I thought, what do we really want to hope for today? What do we want to get out of today? I think for me, really 3 key takeouts I'm hoping for, and we are hoping for today. The first is that we come with deeper understanding. As I said, it's a very complex topic. So I hope that one, you're learning today, you're thinking curiously, asking yourself and your organization different questions. We want to understand the risks facing a food system very deeply. We also want to make sure that our scientific approaches and standards are very well calibrated, and again, that we are able to measure those risks efficiently and effectively. Secondly, maybe it's audacious, but I am still hoping that maybe we can reach consensus on a focused set of practical actions that we can take in the coming months. I think being part of the B20, we have really heeded President's call to be highly action orientated. The time for action is now. We need to really drive strong action, particularly in the areas that will nourish and indeed enhance productivity. So in the coming months, can we agree actions? Can we agree actions on improving the clarity of labeling, particularly on date labeling, where there are several inconsistencies, making it difficult for our shoppers and our consumers alike? Can we also gain alignment on streamlining donation protocols? Maybe what we are doing is different to what others are doing. Can we learn? Can we align? Again, just makes things more efficient and more easier, and that allows us to strengthen and collaborate across sectors. And thirdly, really hoping that we will commit to a transparent measurement tool, shared reporting. Again, this is extremely important because we can never really solve the problem if we don't understand the full extent of the problem. So again, calling for transparency, calling for collaboration, and again, always heeding the compliance requirements that we do that correctly under the competition law, which we are guided by. On this third point, I think the transparent measurement is so essential, and also we believe that Consumer Goods Council can allow us that platform. There is no reason why we can't share and consolidate into the Consumer Goods Council, ensuring our progress is not only measured for our individual organizations, but visible to the country and its leadership, and more importantly, that we can replicate solutions in a very scaled and responsible manner across the industry. So welcome again, and we really hope it is a wonderfully productive morning. Thank you for the dedication. Special thanks to each one of you. You're here because this is a passion point for you. You're here because this is a topic close to your hearts, and we really are looking forward to a day of great dialogue and, more importantly, meaningful change. We thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. I always find it to be quite a big personal motivator to see the diverse buy-in when it comes to addressing issues of sustainability. So buy-in from the government, private sector, NGOs, and academia. I think this serves as widespread acknowledgement that together we can achieve a lot more. I would like to welcome our keynote speaker, Ruisa Ramogopa, MEC for Agriculture in Gauteng.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Program Director. And good morning to you all. Oh, maybe I must try Dumelang. Sanbonani. Goeiemorgen. And a wonderful and blessed and wet, rainy spring morning. You know, we consider the rain to actually be a blessing in agriculture, in our industry, but also in our country. So I woke up today, although I didn't want to get out of bed, but I was I felt light on my feet and happy that the spring rains have finally arrived, and I'm sure the farmers are very excited and happy that the season is now upon us. To yourself, CEO, Ms. Zintle Jikwe, thank you so much for the invitation and for hosting me and having me here today, myself and members of my team, and just your continued commitment to this dialogue, to leading this esteemed institution with such grace, with such integrity. It's such an important institution in our industry. It really is putting to know that it is under some good, strong leadership. And yourself, Nicole, Russ, thank you very much for those opening remarks. As you were speaking, I thought, what more is there to say? You've really covered so much of why we are here today and some of the problems, some of the challenges that we are all trying to resolve. And I'd also like to just acknowledge all other speakers who are here today and who will be lending their voices to this critical conversation. As the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, we are proud to be able to be a part of this conversation. And at a personal level, this is a topic that is very close to my heart, and that I have used every opportunity I can to have discussions such as this and to convene others and try and move this discussion forward. So I really think it's quite serendipitous that the people who really I have been missing, the missing link in the conversation, I think is this one, to have all of the industry stakeholders, retailers, manufacturers, producers, and other government departments, DFFE and others present. I think this is going to be the catalyst that's going to really see us seeing some momentum towards our common objective. So today, we obviously are gathered here as industry stakeholders and role players, but also as citizens and residents of South Africa, as people who care about our fellow citizens and want to see an end to the scourge of hunger and poverty and devastation that we see in so many of our communities. And we meet on this day, which is the United Nations International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste. And there's often a lot of cynicism about days like this, because honestly, there's a day for everything. There is a day for everything. I think every day of the year is allocated to something. One of my big wake-ups when I came into this department was to discover that there's even a World Rabies Day. And I was called to come and officiate over World Rabies Day last year. Who knew? But honestly, if you want to stay busy, there's a day for everything. But I think this day is important. It's really, really important. And what purpose do these days serve? Actually, they serve the purpose of one, giving us the opportunity to just stop our busy lives and all of the things that keep us busy and would distract us, and to focus on this very important topic that perhaps otherwise we may not have found an opportunity to convene in this way and to really put our minds to what we do about this particular challenge. And so I am a big proponent for days like this, and I'm grateful to yourselves for making sure that we are actually here and able to collectively solution around food loss and waste. As you've said, Nicole, the numbers are staggering in terms of food waste. 10 million tons of food is wasted in our country alone annually. And the global figures are, of course, tens of millions of more of that. And whilst we can talk about this number, it's not merely a statistic. It really is a sad indictment of our times that has the ability and does actually produce enough for everybody to eat. But yet, we fail to feed the people in this country. 1 in 5 households, conservatively, in our country go to bed hungry. And that is the single key objective that I think we should all be applying our minds to and saying, how do we make sure that the food that exists, the food that is produced, that's already there, is just available and accessible to the people and the communities who need it most? So this is not, it is on one part an environmental issue because of the impact of food waste on landfills and on general environmental sustainability. But above all, it really is a moral crisis. It is a crisis of who we are as a people, a country that commits itself to the pursuit of human rights, the pursuit of human dignity, profound injustice, that there are millions of children and adults, of course, but children especially under the age of 6 who suffer from stunting because they cannot get the correct balance of nutrition in their diets, and yet the food is there. So that is what we have to solve for. And food waste is not only an outcome of poor coordination. I agree, that's a big part of it. I'm so excited that we are in this room and we are going to be having discussions about how to coordinate ourselves better. But it's also a reflection of our priorities as a society and as government in particular, because as the policymakers and those who are responsible for making laws, policymakers, legislators, and implementers, the outcomes that we see are a reflection of our priorities and our stated priorities, and how we then galvanize the rest of the industry to help shape and give life to those priorities. So this is why we must confront food waste, not just as a marginal issue or as a by the way, but actually as core to how we deliver on the promise embedded in our Constitution, and ultimately a test of our own humanity and our own national consciousness. And it asks of us, and it requires to ask, what kind of society do we want to be? not at the supermarket shelf, but actually at the point of harvest. Too often, crops are lost because of poor storage facilities, insufficient or inadequate cold chain logistics, and inadequate market access. So a farmer may labor for months, nurturing the soil, tending the fields, and harvesting with care, only to see a significant portion of that harvest never reach its destination. For our retailers and manufacturers, waste often arises not from scarcity, but actually from overabundance, oversupply, restrictive packaging standards, and the relentless drive to meet consumer demand patterns too often mean that perfect edible food is discarded. A bruised apple, a dented tin, a loaf past its best before date, all are cast aside, those capable of nourishing a family in need. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here. So we all understand in our respective spaces where the challenges lie and where the weaknesses are. And I think we are all here because we don't accept that this should be the status quo. It should not be as easy to just throw away food, and especially not in a nation like ours that has so many socioeconomic challenges and where hunger continues to be one of those challenges. And every decision made along the value chain has consequences for families, for communities, for the very credibility of our agricultural sector. And that is why infrastructure also matters a great deal. The quality of the cold chain facilities, the upkeep of our fresh produce markets, and making sure that they are properly capacitated and well developed to meet the demands of a growing agricultural sector. If we can move smartphones across provinces with precision, we can and must move food with equal care and equal purpose. So one of the things that really ignited my activism around this issue was reading and learning about the story of the French Garot law, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. But for those who might not be, it effectively is a law that prevents and prohibits the food waste and the destruction or destroying of food, and requires that various participants in the industry must donate food instead. Across the European Union, the Farm to Fork strategy has also set a target and committed to the target to halve food waste by 2030. And on our own continent, Rwanda and Kenya are pioneering innovations in storage and logistics and technology that protect harvests and connect farmers more directly to markets, i.e. shortening those supply chains. And South Africa cannot and should not remain behind. We are not short of talent, we are not short of technology or the resolve to see these types of innovations implemented into our own supply chains. What we need now is a sense of urgency and improved coordination between the various role players to work towards a common objective. Global commitments such as the Sustainable Development Goals are not distant aspirations anymore. They are obligations that demand urgent action. And in fact, those commitments are around the corner. There was a time when 2030 felt like a lifetime away. Now 2030 is here. And this is why the South African Food Loss and Waste Initiative is that much more important and urgent. If we are going to halve food waste by 2030, it's literally going to need all hands on deck. And as the Department of Agriculture, we've made a number of commitments towards this effect, but we also recognize legislatively, technically speaking, it doesn't sit in our mandate. So what we are working towards doing is actually one, sponsoring motions that will see the legislature as well as the Gauteng government holistically adopt improved norms and standards for the reduction and recovery of edible food waste. We also are looking to bring on board a number of different departments to commit to developing reporting and accountability mechanisms, like you spoke about, Nicole, for ourselves, but also for the large-scale food producers and distributors. Facilitating partnerships with food banks, nonprofits, and local distribution networks is also a key role that we can and should be playing. And lastly, is also aligning food waste regulations with existing integrated waste management plans and food security strategies. Now, with the right leadership and coordination between all the industry role players, South Africa can move from lagging behind to setting the standard and setting the tone. And so this is the choice that lies before us. Will we allow waste to continue as the silent scandal of our food system? Or will we rise to the challenge and show that as a nation, as rich in talent and capabilities as ours, we can feed all of our people? And we can, by 2050, not just halve food waste, but actually end hunger in our province, at least in our province. Then we can go to the other provinces after. But let's start here. And as the department, we have made our own commitment around ending hunger. We've committed in the medium term to work with other stakeholders and industry bodies to reduce the hunger level, recorded hunger levels in the province by 10% by 2030. And these things work hand in hand. If we can meet our food waste target in service of our hunger target, we can walk towards a common objective. So our sense is that there are really three key things that need to be done. The first, as I've alluded to, is legislation. So we must consider legal frameworks that make it unacceptable, or at least increasingly difficult, for food to be destroyed or disposed of unnecessarily. We must use all the mechanisms available to us, including incentive measures, as well as penalties where required. France and other countries in the EU have shown us what is possible. Supermarkets are now legally required to donate unsold foods to those who need it. And South Africa can and should draw lessons from that example. Number two, we must strengthen and expand our food recovery and redistribution programs. And I agree with the previous speaker, Mr. Cole Ruas, that it is a function of scale at the end of the day, because there are already a number of organizations and even retailers who are using their CSI contributions towards the issue. But we need to be able to scale up. And I'm of the view that it requires government to play that critical role of helping scale some of these already successful, already tested initiatives around food recovery and redistribution, and bringing the various role players in government together to make that happen. And we often talk about this. I mean, we critique ourselves all the time. If you must know, we actually do. We have ourselves as Department of Agriculture involved in food. You've got Department of Social Development involved in food. You have Department of Health also involved in food in some ways. And in all of that, there is very little coordination, even at a department-to-department level. Not to mention national government. You have a school nutrition program run through Department of Education, and the approach has thus far been very disjointed and inefficient. We are paying a fortune and procuring food, but is it delivering the impact where it senses there's still a lot of work to be done to make sure that we are not also duplicating efforts. Unfortunately, you do find that there are people who will be beneficiaries on multiple departments, also use data and share data more seamlessly amongst each other as government, but also really run scary. The robots are coming to get us. So we know where the problem is. It's really just about now coordinating our efforts and pooling our collective resources, financial and non-financial, to make sure that we actually address the issue. And then, of course, number 3, which I've touched on, is we must also address the root causes of waste at the production and the post-harvest level. So investment in cold chain infrastructure, storage facilities, processing capabilities, and logistics should not be seen as a cost. It is a strategic investment in food security, economic efficiency, rather, and climate resilience. Farmers of all levels must be supported not only to produce, but to ensure that their harvests actually reach the plates of South Africans rather than rotting in fields or in storage facilities. And above all, like a broken record, I must say, this approach cannot be fragmented. It cannot be the responsibility of government alone or of the non-profit sector or the private sector alone. We have to work together. We have to coordinate our efforts to address this challenge. Real change, real sustainable long-term change demands partnership. And it demands that where there is regulation or legislation, that it responds to real world circumstances and realities. Because there's no point in having regulations that are unimplementable or that don't make sense for the industries and the participants in the industry. So we have to also create ongoing platforms of engagement. And the CEO has already committed that we will be having a further engagement beyond today's session so that we can start to practicalize some of these initiatives. I'm really welcoming of that, CEO. I'm looking forward to working with the Consumer Goods Council and your members and all the role players in the room to see some of that really come to fruition. So as I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who know and have experienced politicians, if they say, as I conclude, you know you've got like at least another 20 minutes to go. So hold tight. But as I conclude, it's quite clear and evident to all of us in this room that the challenge that faces us is immense. It is a big challenge, but it is not insurmountable. Food waste is a crisis, yes, but it is a solvable crisis. It is a crisis that, with enough political will and with the caliber and the quality of leadership that I see in this room, it is a challenge that we can leave in this generation. It does not have to be the story that future South Africans tell about themselves. And if we can start to have some urgency and momentum towards our goal of halving food waste by 2030, that will be the first step towards us realizing a zero hunger future, which is what we must be aspiring to. No child in Gauteng, no child in South Africa should be going to bed hungry. Whilst we are one of the top food producing nations and exporting to other countries in the world. So we must act with urgency, with courage, with boldness, We must invest and make the necessary capital investments where we think it matters and where we think it will be transformative. And we imagine a South Africa where no child goes to bed hungry, where no mother has to make the impossible choice about whether to feed her child or to pay for public transport to get to work. Zero hunger, zero poverty, zero food waste. That is what we must be bold enough to declare. And so I leave you with this one thought that hopefully will guide us in our discussions today and in our policy making and thinking going forward. Ending food waste is not about saving leftovers. It is about saving lives. Let us ensure that the lives of our children, our communities, and our country are never compromised by food waste. I thank you.
Thank you very much, MEC, for those powerful and thought-provoking words. You've hit the nail on the head with your framing and analysis, and I very much look forward to working with each and every one of you to develop this holistic approach outlined by the MEC. I would briefly like to call up Zintle just to present the MEC with a parting gift. Thank you once again, MEC. I would like to call up our next speaker, Professor Lisa Corsten from University of Pretoria.
Okay. That's forward and that's a pointer. Do you have a pointer? Wow. May I please just say to our very important Gauteng MEC that that was incredible speech, and that was from your heart, and we do appreciate it. I'm feeling a bit speechless. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, what an incredible privilege to be standing here. It almost feels a little bit like celebrating Women's Month. And I'm not sure why I'm saying it, but I noticed the first 4 speakers are all female. And we are acutely aware of that. I also wanted just to say to Nicole Ruiz, thank you very much for that really inspirational presentation. That was also from your heart and excellent experience. I really feel that we can only succeed if this is the kind of leadership we have. I want to share with you some slides. I do have a presentation that I can read, and then I thought, no, if I can use the slides, let's see if I can get the slides. Then I'm going to do like flash photography for you. And the reason why and the reason why I want to use slides, and just let me get one, is because I want to share with you the complexity. So if they can just put it on slideshow, then, and I don't want you to read the slides. I would actually like to just walk in the front like an artist, a singer, and just take you through this amazing world where I live in. I'm just doing a technical adjustment. It's not working. Okay. Is it? Can you not read? Okay, we have technical challenges, and that's fine. You know, we deal with things in this modern world. So I have a new way of asking them just to move the slides. We have a lot of slides, but once again, let's not get stuck in the slides. Let's get stuck in the message. So if I can just have a slide change, let's just get rhythm. I want to actually share with you 5 ideas. I want to put food safety in perspective because I want you to understand what's happening with us as scientists in the global world. So we are really functioning at a global level. We are at the World Economic Forum. We sit on World Health Organization. We sit on the FAO panels, on GFSI, and we have a different exposure. And that needs to connect with the base, and we need to solve our problems locally. And we can look at globally what's happening, but we have to find local solutions. So I want to share with you the complexity because I believe the scientific community is trapped in that complexity. And what we do need is a partnership between science, public and private sector, and the people on the ground. So I want to also put people in the middle of this table because it is about people and their rights and their food. And we're all partners in this journey to make sure that everyone has a nutritious, safe meal every day. I also want to just talk a little bit around diagnostic surveillance and research because I'm not sure you realize how fast things are changing in our world. We are now at a level where we have mobile, whole genome sequencing units. And I believe with the rate at which things are changing, and particularly now with AI, we most probably will within a year or 2 have in-house testing methods that we can maybe globally connect and have global databases. So it's happening so fast that we are almost lost in that space of innovation. And that connection is not coming through. So if we can find a way of making it work for all, that would be the solution, the way forward. The third thing is I just want to touch on food safety, shared responsibility, and just show you some of the results because we can do high profile presentations here. We can have incredible discussions. But if it's not including the people, the majority of people who do not have access to safe food, then I'm missing the point. We can have an incredible food safety compliance system at the top and in the formal and the highly regulated center, and we can self-regulate and we can have these incredible events like today. And then you can just drive outside and you can see thousands and millions of people without that protection or those levels of discussion. So how do we empower them from the ground? How do we include them in this journey? And then I want to just touch on education and training. Maybe my time is up. I see we're already half an hour behind schedule. And then obviously, as our MEC said, very importantly, the legislative frameworks, the policies, everyone's talking about science policies, the interfaces, regulation and governance. Next slide. This thing is not working very well this morning. So I want to just take you through a complex world of food security. We heard that South Africa is food secure, the only country in the continent that's food secure, but at home we food insecure. We heard the statistics and that's our reality. But I want to tell you another reality. China lost 50 million people due to hunger. It's estimated 50, there's different figures. And that was during the leap forward stage, 60 years ago, roughly. And that was an agricultural based systems change that the country went through that resulted with climate change, flooding, and drought in the history's biggest hunger ever. And China was able to turn it around. China is now food secure. So if we look at food security, we often find ourselves, and I'm the little red blob in this little circle, because we always the stepchild in the discussions. When the food security people get together, it's everything about the nutrition and the availability and distribution. It's never about the safe food. If it's not safe, it's not food. And I keep saying that to them to include me in the discussion so that we have a voice. So I believe the safe food people need to stand up and have our voice and take our rightful place in the discourse and the discussions around food security. But I just want the next slide, please, because they talk about all these pillars in food security. And if I can get the next slide, I think our lady in the back is not on my page. While she's busy getting my next slide, I'm going to, maybe if you can just help me. I want to just unpack this. And I know it's not good to show figures like this with so many little bubbles. And once again, I just want to show you the complexity. Next slide. So this is actually what happens. So food safety to me almost get lost in this incredible complexity because they first of all never discuss food production when we talk to the food security people. It's always sort of a hindsight thing. And when you talk about production, they totally forget about all the factors that affect food loss or weight and loss, not waste, because it starts in the soil. And if you don't have good soil, you're not going to have food. You're not going to have adequate food. And then secondly, we never talk about water. And water is the key point in food safety. Our water is so contaminated right now that we cannot produce enough safe food for all. And we have to seriously rethink the water within the food dynamic. And that's why the water energy nexus is so important. And I want to specifically mention the Water Research Commission, who is significantly contributing towards research in this space. And I will share with you one or two slides just to show you what they are doing. So water is key. If we're going to talk about food security, we're going to talk about water. And then, of course, agricultural. Safety standards, food. It's a whole happening. Around dates happening. And I feel in a way it's sometimes distracting from the food discussion. But we have discussions around food adulteration, counterfeit food. We now talk about food agency. That's the latest word and buzzword and discussion. The right to have a choice, your own food that you want to prepare, it be available, and it's your choice to make a decision about food you have. So next slide. And then, of course, there's all the discussion in forgotten food, the empty calories, and the right to food. So this is happening within the context of scientists sitting ways internationally, locally, talking about food security, safe food. And the reason why I want to show you this is because it distracts from funding and it distracts from the key elements. We must anchor our discussions in food must still be safe. And those elements must be there. Can I get the next slide? Then there's another very interesting thing happening globally. and also locally. And that's the discussion on One Health. And it's almost taken center stage, once again, pushing food security aside. And it includes all these environmental climate change issues, but it's always about who's leading the discussions. So I sit in a lot of these meetings, and then I will always say to them, what about plant health? You never talk about plant health. You cluster plant health with environmental health. And if there's no good, healthy plants, there can be no food, because plants provide food for animals and humans. So water and plants are essential elements of food safety. And then, of course, there's this new kid on the block. So the latest discussions globally, and this is distracting once again, and not distracting, and it's important, but I want you to understand how things are shifting quickly. Antimicrobial resistance. So we've got surveillance programs and funding. I can unlock so much funding now just for antimicrobial resistance. And we're just picking up everywhere. And it's just through the whole food system, from the water. And you can go back, and we do source tracking, and we're going to animal husbandry. And we can just pick up antimicrobial resistance all the way from the gut to the feces, to the water, to the soil, to the crop, back into the human. So it's circulating, it's there, it's increasing. What's the drivers? How do we bring it into the food safety discussions? How important is it? And then all you have to do is have one family member that dies in the hospital because of sepsis and the inability to control those diseases. So these are critical issues. Next slide. And then when, I've already mentioned water, and then when you go internationally, then everyone talks about the circular economy. And this is how we're going to fix it. We're going to link everything back, and we're going to take the waste and convert it back into the food system. And it sounds fantastic, and it's maybe working in Europe. But once again, we must build something for us, by us, and from the ground for our people, first and foremost. So yes, I can go and map these. We do millions of these maps. We bring in water sovereignty. We bring in the water policy. We try and connect that with the food policies, with irrigation initiatives, with innovation, with community science. And so we spend hours and days in communication and mapping exercises. Next slide. And then the reality is, if there's no food, there's no future. And we can link all these millions of bubbles together, and we can bring all the people together in one room. Because to me, it's about distracting from the funding to the real issues on the ground. Next slide. So we know what's happening. We know the statistics, and we've heard brilliant statistics as well. And we also do know that Africa now has, for the first time, its house in order. We, in fact, have a food safety index that we're busy unrolling in Africa. And we now know we've got this food safety strategy for Africa, and there's a whole lot of things happening in the EU. And once again, who's leading it, and where's South Africa in those discussions and platforms? And are we represented enough? And what are we doing at home? And how fast are we driving that? Next slide. But let me just take you back 2 steps. I just quickly want to touch on these 2 slides. Let's not forget one of the most important events in the history of food safety, and it happened right here. And I want to ask, and you all have seen these publications and these maps, and I do know before that block, a lot of people in the food industry already knew Listeria is here and it's a problem. I spoke to people in food, not retail, in food processing, and they already said to me, oh, we've got this Listeria on the drain and we're battling. We've recently been monitoring some food processing plants where we do minimal processing of vegetables, and we pick it up in the drains and it's increasing, and we just throw more disinfectants and it's just increasing, it's persistent. And we know that. We know all the research that's now coming out around this. And yet I want to ask the question, next slide. What have we done after this case? We know we had that class action. We know we've seen this new emerging food justice standing up. And if we look at the recommendations, I want to ask you, have we learned any lessons? Because we did say at one stage we're going to have more stringent consumer protection laws. And we did identify the informal sector. And we did say that we need to be more accountable and enforce it better and close the loopholes. And we said we must strengthen surveillance and laboratory capacity. So have we done that? Next slide. Well, all I can tell you is just think of the more recent outbreak and challenges we've had. So now we all know we've got the issue around pesticide and the deaths that we had and the discussion around spaza shops. And we have seen, next slide, all the news reports, and next slide, and all the comments, and even our president speaking about all the investigations. And now we're working on a food safety pesticide policy. And we have, thanks to Department of National Department of Agriculture, we have had an incredible working session, bringing everyone together. NGOs, farm workers, they were all there, and we spoke about pesticides. But to me, the absence group was the informal traders. But what is important was this incredible step that the National Department of Agriculture did, because the agricultural industry was represented, all of us. It was an incredible discussion that was rich and that was most certainly taking us forward. Next slide. And what this discussion brought out was the toxicology around and the medical profession, how they are picking up poisoning of children and the incredible impact. But it's not only pesticides. It's that home cleaning detergents that you have in your kitchen that's not locked away from our children. And a little kid can crawl in and drink it. We know the story is happening all the time around us. And that tells me the incredible need for consumer awareness and taking our consumers along with us to connect the science, the information with the consumers, with the people on the ground. Next slide. We also know that the pesticide story comes from the informal market, and we saw the impact on the informal traders. Yet they provide food for a very important source, the majority of people, and particularly the most vulnerable of people. Next slide. So we know the agricultural industry has taken note. There's definitely several chemicals that we are reconsidering. We are looking at it. We're putting things in place. The agricultural sector, out of their own, started pushing now more for IPM, more organic produce, or using alternative approaches. So there's action from the floor. There's action from the agricultural industry. But how much action is there from the rest of us in this whole food system? Next slide. So I want to, next slide, just talk to you a little bit about networks and diagnostics. Next slide. Because the future, I believe, is in working together. And unless we put our energy and resources together, we will not solve it permanently. It will not be sustainable. And this is one of the tools we play with, network analysis, and we do a lot of AI stuff now. But if we look at what's the key, so you can go and put any of these key challenges into these networks. Next slide. And it maps out all these challenges for you, and it can show the interlinking of these. And we have now started, for instance, with AMR surveillance, just to try and do source tracking, to look at sources and sampling methods and aligning and benchmarking with international players, but specifically local laboratories and players in the continent. Next slide. And we can move on from this. Give me the next slide. This is just some of the statistics, and we even go further, and then we put it into food safety and say, well, what's the key challenges for us in South Africa? Is it the mycotoxins? Is it pesticides? Is it foodborne pathogens? If it is, which one is it? Next slide. And we can now more effectively map these links. Next slide. Next slide. And we can actually show over time how research has moved. We can now actually go and map prevalence of certain pathogens within different countries. And this is one of the studies, metadata analysis studies we've done for Africa. Next slide. And it just shows you the prevalence of AMR, but taking into consideration the methods used in the different laboratories. Next slide. And then we've got, of course, wonderful techniques, never mind whole genome sequencing, but we can do incredible source tracking. And of course, all of this must be underscored with sound publications. And you have to publish in reputable journals. Otherwise, we do not have a voice as scientists. So what's interesting from the previous slide about the source tracking is it gives us information that can now be fed into policy briefs. And that specific whole series of research papers, I think in total we had about 20 papers that came out. That's now being used by Water Research Commission to develop fit for purpose frameworks for small scale farmers. I want to go on to this very important thing, and I'm also mindful of my time, but I just want to reflect a little bit of comparative work between the formal and the informal sector. Because as I said in the beginning, we cannot develop this fantastic vehicle for the formal sector and then sit back and say our food is safe. We need to align it with the reality on the ground, and we need to make sure that we have a fit for purpose system for all. So our research is really focused on comparing from production all the way to the consumer. Next slide. And we've used these tools. And for instance, we could then go and map street foods or food in the informal sector. And we would take the same kind of crops and we would go and look at the commercial sector. How does it compare? And our initial statement was food from this sector is less safe than in the formal sector. And we could at the end say, no, it's not necessary because those food chains are shorter and people don't buy and keep, they buy and eat. Now, next slide. And then it takes us to microbial risk assessment. And my next question to you is, how many microbial risk assessors do we have in South Africa? Well, I'm training one PhD that hopefully will graduate soon, but we do not have enough capacity. We should invest in more building capacity in these critical fields. Next slide. And it's not only the risk, the capacity to do risk ranking and risk communication, etc. Next slide. But it's our ability to bring it together. Next slide. So I want to just touch on, and I know my time is up, so I'm going to just touch on a few key things. It's not only about risk. It's not only about scientists having the capacity to use these modern tools and generate data. It's about where's the data, who controls data, and what are we going to do with the data? And what's now happening in Africa is saying, and this comes from, I think it was Rwanda's president or someone, this is Africa's data. We will control our own data. And you can come to us, but we are not taking our data and allow it just to be controlled by everyone. So this is an important point. We must be self-sustainable in terms of our data. And there's models currently being developed for data sharing. And there's a lot of activities. And I just want to show you this. What they are doing, we're mapping all the laboratories. And we are saying if the data is generated from all these millions of laboratories, be it accredited, be it research, and we can link it, we can do more predictive research. Next slide. So we are also looking at setting up mobile labs and also a different kind of laboratories, but fitted and calibrated so that we can actually take it throughout the regions and we can get better data, that we can link better, and then we can retain our data within the continent and use it so that we can get a solution on the ground. Next slide. And then I just want to touch some of these challenges, and I think you're aware of these and all the diagnostic capabilities we have. Next slide. But I want to take the Pan-African concept of data, creating the infrastructure in the continent to retain our own data, to share our data and to use it to our benefit. This is an initiative. It's a big talk of the town. South Africa is playing a leading role in this. Next slide. And I believe that we should all be part of these conversations. Because it's not only about financing this, and we're talking about trillions of dollars, but it is participating in this. Next slide. And for me, there's a call to action, and a very important component to all of this is what is our national, and how do we fill the gaps? How do we invest to build and create more infrastructure, connect all the scientists, and be part of the global picture, but ensure that we have local competent scientists and engage with policymakers and the industry. And then how do we integrate all of this? I think my time is up, and I have a few slides. We mapped all the safety universities, where do we have training and capacity, but I think my time is up, and carry on. Okay, well, let me just share with you a few more slides. So opportunities, and as I speak, I've been talking to Wellcome Trust, we've been talking to the European Union, they're giving us 25 million euro now, creating these networks, these hubs. And my suggestion is, and as an outcome of this, we must put forward that we want a safety hub where you link your best scientists in the world and you grow your next generation scientists so that we can be the leaders in the world. And it's incredible how many initiatives we have and how much money we actually have out there. If we can come with a good plan, we can unlock it. But it is going to be about a co-funding model. The days are over when one group come, or one continent come, or one government come and fund Africa, and Africa stands there and wait for the funding. It's now going to be Africa decides its priorities, we co-develop it around the table, and we co-fund it. And this is what's happening at the moment. It's discussions at UN level, it's discussions, World Economic Forum, everywhere. How do we ensure this capacity development? Next slide. So a lot of policy recommendations coming out, and I'm not going to touch on that. Next slide. And there's roadmaps currently for all of these actions, and I think it's important to share it, not only for AMR, there's for One Health. We are mapping these globally, these opportunities, these initiatives, and we have deadlines. And yes, 2030 is around the corner, and yes, we can make it work. Next slide. And then I want to share with you just finally, before my slides, on the sort of hotspots that's developing, AI initiatives for food safety. And what we're doing is we're literally harvesting the world's knowledge around food safety. And we're harvesting it and analyzing at different levels, up to the point of that inherent knowledge, that traditional knowledge. How do we capture that knowledge, even in the informal sector? Because they know how to keep food safe. They have a lot of incredible knowledge. How do we capture it, retain it, and use it in our system? Next slide. And then how do we become part of these incredible networks? And it's actually quite important that we play a part of these global AI food safety initiatives, specifically the ones that's being developed for Africa. Next slide. And then let's not forget the work we have done. Now, years ago, it was about 15, 20 years ago, we did a food safety authority model for South Africa. And I think we need to go and revisit those models that we can go forward with. We should make sure that our scientists are sitting on these initiatives where we can give an African perspective on OECD and Codex platforms, where our science go in there and we are part of the global change. Next slide. And these are just some of the models we're developing to bring in our formal, informal sector. And we're the only country in the world that's got this unique, divergent economy between formal and informal. And that should be our bargaining chip, because everyone wants to work with us now, because they want to understand that better so that they can use it in their own countries to bettering their own system. So we can play a leading role. And be part of this food security, food safety indexes. It's fantastic. It's very exciting. Next slide. Be part of this water initiative. Next slide. And then finally, just to give you an idea, we then said, well, who in Africa is training food safety people? Who's got a formal degree? We can go and map all the short cases, but this is the reality of South Africa. Next slide. And we actually took all the degrees that's offered, the curriculums. Next slide. And we actually said, well, what is in those courses? Is that what you as industry need? Or is this not aligned with industry needs? Are we training the people that you need? Or are we based on historic old training methods? Yesterday, Friday, our Senate had a meeting around how we're going to change our educational model because of AI. We now find that 88% of our students use AI, but they do agree they're not fully in control of that technology. This is the reality that's happening. So we are, as a university, changing, and we know we have to change rapidly. And how are we going to do that? And what role will you as a retailer play, or as the private public sector, to help us, to guide us in this process of building capacity for all of us? Next slide. And we've even looked into Africa. So how many people do we have food safety degrees in Africa? And it's far short of what we require. Next slide. And then we can go and compare it with the rest of the world. What's happening in the rest of the world? The best food safety universities in the world, what's in their curriculum? How do they train them? What do they use? How can we improve our own system? Next slide. And yes, just further on analyzing this, comparing this, and I think that will be my final slide. Just to show you what we're doing at the food security, doing these plant-based, very interesting place-based research where we take a whole town and we do the whole food mapping of it, the food safety status, from formal to informal, from farmers to markets. And I believe if we can have a lot of these models, we will better understand our own food system. And I think that will be my last slide. And what have been achieved, I think we need to move towards a food safety knowledge hub. I think we must recognize the global leading role we're already playing, and we should take hands and go forward together. And I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your fascinating insights and statistics and an extremely detailed breakdown of challenges we are facing in the country around food safety. I'm very much looking forward to seeing you unpack it further in our panel discussion coming up later. Currently, we're about 30 minutes behind schedule. We're due for a tea break now. I don't know if we are fine for like maybe a 10-minute leg stretch, reduce that tea break. It is meant to be half an hour. Would we be fine doing 10 minutes and coming back and then entering into our next speaker before our panel discussion? Okay, so the time is currently 7 minutes past. If we could be back, it'll start coming into the room at about 11:15, please. Thank you.
All right, so you would have seen by the agenda that my job today is really to do a bit of celebration and really highlight some of the successes. So you've heard today already around the problems, you've heard around some of the solutions, you know, you've heard who's in the room and who cares about it, which is all of us really. But my job today is just to say, what have we done so far in terms of food loss next year? And really just, celebrate everyone who's been on this journey so far, and of course, it is going to take all of us to make a difference in this space. So while I'm waiting for the slides, I recognize a lot of faces in the room, but I know that some of you actually may be new, and we find this a lot, and we have these conversations, that people would be, well, who's the Consumer Goods Council? It's the first time you're walking into the room, and really I just wanted to introduce who the CGCSA is to start. To say that the CGC is an industry association who's got the core mandate to support and advise the consumer goods sector and advocate on their behalf. And you've heard some of the people in the room are on the board, and you've heard Claire is here, she's the CEO. And essentially the Food Loss and Waste Initiative sits within one of the many divisions within the Consumer Goods Council. And that division is the Food Safety and Sustainability Initiative division. And Chloe, who's sitting at front, and you'll see her shortly, is the lead of that division. And I am a part of Chloe's team. So we have the slides up, and so we can just move to the slide to show you the divisions, and then maybe just click through to show you that the Food Loss and Waste Initiative is where the green apple is over there. So just in terms of why this sits with the CGCSA, the organisation basically is the ideal secretariat for the initiative because it represents over 9,000 member companies within the consumer goods, retail and services sector. Many of whom are food businesses, so it makes sense that this is today of representing many people who have been on a journey over the last 5 years to try and acknowledge the CGC team in the room. If I can just ask by show of hands if you're part of the Exco or if you're part of the team who's created this wonderful event for us today, if you could just raise your hand. And I can, see, you can see around the room at the back and the front, there are many people today who are part of this and are supporting the work. And you've heard today, if we can click to the slide, thank you, just back one, is really, this is the International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste. It's actually the sixth one. And we launched this initiative 5 years ago in this very room. So it's very serendipitous, auspicious for us to be standing here today in that very useful area, useful these bricks. And essentially, 5 years ago, right here was where the initiative was launched. And that was really as a result of a series of dialogues that happened across the food value chain. Over 500 stakeholders, some of whom are actually in the room today, in partnership with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition and the DFFE, launched what we call today the South African Food Loss and Waste Initiative. So it's not a new thing, maybe it's new to some of you, but we've been on this journey for 5 years already. And our MEC and our agriculture just said, it seems like a long way to 2030. Now we're really sitting, it's 5 years, it's just around the corner. So essentially we know on the previous slide that we are working towards halving food loss and waste along the food value chain by 2030. That's our vision, that's our goal. And what we are doing here is we're doing this in a very strategic way. We're not just having this big goal out there and saying we will do this, we're actually working by using what we call the South African food loss and waste utilization hierarchy. The first is to prevent waste from happening in the first place, and that's the green bar, the blue bar at the top of the hierarchy. The next is to make sure that we're actually sending food that is fit for human consumption to people in need. As we've been saying today, it doesn't make any sense. It's a moral issue for us not to be feeding people who are going to be hungry. So prevention is our number one goal. Number two is to send surplus food that is fit, nutritious, safe to people in need so that everyone goes to bed with food in their stomachs. And then thirdly, we are busy working down the hierarchy to move anything that is going to waste destinations up the hierarchy to places which we see as secondary markets, places where value can be derived from that food. And we're doing this in the context of a circular systems approach, and we're working towards developing a sustainable food system. So that's the how, and it's the goal the goal post for us in terms of what we're doing. And if we can move to the next slide, please. In terms of preventing food loss and waste, and the next slide will come up, is that if we meet SDG target 12.3, we're also going to achieve other sustainable development goals. And so if we can just click, we will achieve goals like zero hunger. We will include sustainable development goals around climate action, around life below land, or a life on land and life below water. There are many SDGs that are linked to us achieving this, and we've said this today. It's a systems approach. When we do this, and these are some of them. We've spoken about nutrition and health, safety. There are other SDGs, some key ones to introduce to you today. One CSIR report, which basically is our data, but it's the national figure that we have and that we are using as the number we're trying to tackle in the country. It also in that report says 80% of that number is edible, i.e. that food could be feeding people. So if we move on, our team did a little bit of an exercise to say, well, how many meals could that be? And we are working on figures to convert waste figures into these social metrics, but this could actually provide 3 meals a day to half the population for a year. Just imagine that, I think all of us care and know that that's something we want to be doing. And you've heard today we're a food secure country, but we have food insecurity in our homes. And we produce enough food. But the hunger numbers are staggering. There are millions of people in our country who are food insecure. And with this waste figure, we could be tackling that. We shouldn't be talking about hunger in our country. If we move to the next slide, I always find these pictures quite shocking, of waste, and I think we see them a lot. But essentially, this is the environmental message, which I think we're all aware of, is that if we tackle food loss and waste, and if it doesn't end up in landfill, we are basically going to tackle the issue of climate change, which affects the whole system. We know that it affects water, it affects what we grow, it affects what food we have available to us. And we know that we live in a country which has some of the most amazing biomes is the word from my science days, in terms of, our biodiversity. But when we do, have these piles of waste and food going into landfill, we're actually destroying that. And we are the custodians of the planet. And I think previously mentioned our children. My son said to me, "Mom, can I work in food loss and waste?" And I said, "No, there won't be food loss and waste by the time you grow up, and that's our job." He's going to challenge himself to make a career because he's quite keen on the issue. But in reality, he shouldn't be dealing with that, nor any of our children. So if we move on to just the economic argument, and there are a lot of businesses in the room today, we know that if we tackle this issue, we basically can create jobs. We can improve livelihoods. We can, as business, be more profitable. We can reduce risk, and we can drive efficiencies. And I know risk and efficiencies, is commonplace in language we talk within businesses. But essentially, this is also people who don't have a part to play in the food system, who can be creating a solution and contributing to our economy. So it's not just about big business in the room today, it's also about the potential businesses that actually could be coming online as a result of tackling this issue. So those are the figures. Essentially, today, it's about focusing on what we've done so far. And, I think in the room you can hear what people know is happening, and sometimes we don't actually see the big picture. And hopefully today there is something that you learn about what's actually been happening so far, and maybe you're inspired to come with us on the journey. But here are a few reasons for us to celebrate. Firstly, we didn't have a team of people on the ground, and we need people, everyone of us in the room, to actually be dedicated and work towards this. And until recently, it was McClough, under the leadership of Zinkler, myself, I was a half-time resource, and we basically now have 4 team members working full-time on this issue. We also have an in-country impact lead through RAP, and another support, Clinton Isingeni, who's not in the room today. But if I could just have the team, the 4 team members, to stick up their hands. Kylan is one named Hira, Sibulela, and Boitamela, and yeah, these are new people. Precious, myself, Mujala, we've been around the block, but this is a new team, and it's really exciting. Nicola, you can stand up or raise your hand. You'll see her in our workshops, but she's in country and she's here as technical support to us. The other thing is that we're on the map as South Africa, which is always nice. I feel like we're proud. Yes. We're there, and you can see us among all of these countries. There are others working on the issue, but this is the Global Pact Network, and we are not working in isolation. We are working as part of these initiatives across the globe, best practice sharing, and in fact we're sharing what we're doing well and leading in some of these spaces. So just so that you know, it's not just us at the bottom of the continent of Africa, we are part of a bigger network in this regard. If we move to the next slide, please. We work in 3 main areas. The one is what we call partners, partnering with businesses like yourselves, organizations, stakeholders across the value chain. And it's a click, 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 so maybe you want to click 3 times and then I'll carry on talking. It's partners, people, which is people are South African citizens, and it's a new area for us. We haven't really been focusing in that space. And then you've heard today the enabling role that policy can actually make in this space. And so we do focus on that, and you'll hear some of the work that we've been doing around policy. So if we move into the partners perspective, we've actually now commissioned research with the Bureau of Food and Agricultural Policy, and a report is in our custodianship, which shows that approximately 44% of the formal, and I know we've spoken about formal and informal, and there's a need to look at the whole sector, but what we've been able to map so far is that 44% of the food value chain are represented by our core signatories. And that's no small feat in in a country like ours, when there are hundreds of thousands of businesses in our value chain. Just to say that all the formal retailers are now on board, and we have most of our signatories are actually food processors and manufacturers. 50%, we think, based on this report, is represented. So we are moving towards representativeness, to stumble over that word, of our value chain in South Africa. And here you can see the food businesses that are signatories to the initiative. There's 78 of them at the moment, and all of these organizations have committed to reducing food loss and waste in their operations. If we move to the next slide, there's this group of organizations that we call associate signatories, and they are what we call solution and service providers. These people are key to tackling the issue of food loss and waste, because we need solutions, we need services, we need academia, NGOs and government, all of which are in this group, who are going to enable and allow our signatories to meet the goal of reducing food loss and waste. So it's exciting, there are 57 of them to date, and these numbers keep growing. In terms of measurement and reporting, I think, Nicole, you said, in industry you say, well, what you don't measure, you don't manage. You know, and there's many iterations of how you can say that. But essentially, starting and looking within operations at what's happening is the first step. How are we going to measure and report to know what is going on? And so we are the first country in our network to develop an online reporting platform for our signatories, and it's based on the internationally harmonized food loss and waste standard. So this is not us coming up with, something nice that we can, put together. It's the standard in terms of food loss and waste reporting. And we have done this as a country. And the GSS team, I saw Taryn, I don't know if Michelle's in the room, but essentially that team has been really instrumental in making this a reality. If we move to the next slide, please. We've also done work with the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, or CSIR, to start analysing the data we've been collecting from this reporting platform. And that report is something we're going to be unpacking with our signatories before the end of this year. But we have 59 of our core signatories who have submitted data over the last 4 years. So whilst we have the tool, we also have people who are using the tool, and they come on to they've signed up to the initiative over years, and that's why the numbers of people reporting every year is not the same as the ones that have reported across the 4 years, because we started out with a small group and the number grows. But essentially, we have people submitting data, and we now have an analysis of that data, which is going to be unpacked. And we hope to present a public report showcasing what we know already. In terms of actions, it doesn't always help just to report the number that was, going back to your year and saying, well, this is how much went to animals and people, and this is how much went to landfill. It actually is really important to develop what we call action plans, because this is where the team supports the signatories in real time. They say, this is what we're working on, how can we assist, where's the best practice, how can we, in this year, help you not look back at last year's problem. And so 22 of our signatories have submitted action plans, and it's something that we formalized in this last year, and so we are expecting this number to grow. If we move to the next slide, please. We have also started work in the people area. So this is South African citizens, and you heard the number of 18% of waste happening in that area. So we know up the value chain there is a lot of opportunity, but people and households are important because they also drive change. We know that as businesses, they can change the world actually a lot of the time, just with their purchasing power and their habits. And we are all South African consumers. So we launched our first ever digital food loss and waste awareness campaign, because we felt we needed to put out a message to actually raise awareness of the topic among the public because it hasn't really been done in a concerted way before. So if we move to the next slide, please. Our campaign is called End Food Waste Day. And we've, as I said, it's digital. We've got an Instagram platform, a Facebook platform, and a campaign landing page. And Carmen is leading this amazing work, and it's been launched just for a month. But the next slide just shows you how well this is being received and how people are actually engaging with it. So we've got over 9,000 visits to our landing page, 731 downloads as of Friday of our resources like meal planners and what else have we got? Meal plan and recipes to use, food that is from a previous meal. Our Facebook page didn't exist a month ago, and we've already got 1,800 followers, over 100 followers on Instagram, and so we are starting to gain momentum in terms of the topic in the public space. The other thing that we don't have is consumer insights, and you'll know as businesses that this is key to developing any campaign. And so we've undertaken research with the team in the UK, RAP, who have actually partnered with Ipsos, and we're actually surveying 2,000 South Africans to help develop insights to inform a behaviour change campaign. So not just awareness, but really trying to now start to change behaviour. So that is really exciting, and we'd love for you to follow and share. And there are media packs that you in your organisations could take and actually share with your constituents. We need to all amplify the messaging. Then from a policy perspective, which happened on the 29th of August, the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment published the National Strategy for Reducing Food Losses and Waste. This is really critical. And to have a national strategy about the issue shows that this is a matter of national importance. And you can see by the caliber of people in the room today, everyone cares about it and is ready to take action. So it's now for us to take this strategy and take it forward and scale our actions. So what we have been doing within the initiative, the first thing we did was to try and get surplus food to people in need. We developed a set of food donation best practice guidelines. And this is the best practice collaboratively put together by signatories within the initiative. But those guidelines have actually been used to develop a South African national standard. And those, if we go to the next slide, please. The guidelines themselves were published in 2023, they're being updated as we speak. But you can see that the South African National Standard is about to be published. This is the draft, and Precious, who I did see earlier, is representing us at the SABS Technical Committee, and essentially this is a step forward in trying to ensure that this is a national standard aimed at improving food donation in the country. Then, at the next step of the hierarchy, you can see food being sent to animals. And the industry and the signatories have said, this is an area that we need to work on and develop guidelines on because it's not really clear what can go to animals, what is safe for animals. And we heard from Prof. Corsten a bit earlier about how important that is because this is part of the system in which we operate. And so Tahira is leading the group on developing best practice guidelines, outlining the regulations, and making it clear what people have to comply with and where those gaps. So what action do we need to take to address those? So that's really exciting. So that's what's happened to date. A lot of big things. Those things don't happen overnight. They really don't. And there's a lot of hard work that has gone into them. In terms of the next year, and we are looking in 1 year increments because this is how we're agile, this is how we are moving forward quickly, is that we are focusing on finalizing social, environmental, and financial business cases, which are going to help us to firstly make it clear why people need to be involved in this, and those who are involved have the right information at hand to drive the conversation forward within businesses. And then also to attract missing sectors. You've heard today we've got all retailers on board, we've got a huge group of manufacturers and retailers, we're working with consumers, but upstream and even in sectors like food service, we are underrepresented. And so with these business cases, these are critical tools to making sure we have everyone in the room. The next is that we will continue measuring and reporting and taking action, and there'll be more people doing that. Those numbers will increase, and we've got dedicated key account managers to assist at a technical level to assist our businesses do that. The other big thing, and you'll hear more about this soon, is that we'll be launching 2 impact interventions for collective action. The one is going to be around municipal organic waste. It'll be a pilot, and it's really key because food can't end up in landfills. There are restrictions that are coming up around the country. Businesses who operate all over and all provinces know there are restrictions, and the solutions and the restrictions basically make the right environment to actually help businesses to make sure that waste is being prevented in the first place, but does not end up in those destinations which we know are a big issue. The other is that we are wanting to pilot a GS1 2D barcode project. More information again will be shared about both of these, but this is an opportunity for, if you're not involved, to come to the table and be part of collective action. And this is really where we're going to see the numbers and the scale of this work. Then lastly, I mentioned the solution providers and service providers. They're a group that are untapped at the moment, and we've got a plan to engage them so that we can showcase to all of the businesses who are probably sitting there going, I don't know whether I should compost or use black salt apply or whatever. We are going to be part of assisting you with those solutions. Then next year, with our insights, we're going to undertake a consumer behavior change campaign, likely on date labeling. I'm saying that at my own peril, but I think there's a real strong evidence for going that way. We will launch a website as a resource hub so that everyone knows where to get information about what's going on, so that you know what is happening all the time. And then we do need some extra people to help us. A team of 4, with all of these projects coming online, means that we are going to contract extra support to make sure we're able to achieve everything we say we're going to be doing. And then lastly, we need to be making sure that what we're doing is sustainable. So a future-proofing and a funding strategy will be in place to make sure that we're not sort of relying on short-term pieces of funding, but how do we make sure that we are here to 2030 and beyond. And then lastly, just to move out of the action phase, just to have, I think, 3 more slides. It's been said today that food is really important in various ways. Many people have said this, but this is actually a Food Lovers Market Heritage Day. Ridwan, I know in the room, it's your ad. I did quote you there in terms of the picture, but this is like a big Heritage Day bring and braai. And I think a lot of the foods on the slide will be very familiar to people in the room, but food is a symbol of togetherness. It's our culture, it's our heritage, it is what unites us as a country, it connects us. And whether you're in safety, nutrition, sustainability, we're all looking at this from different angles, but it is going to take all of these angles to look at this in a way that is going to drive the right kind of systemic change we need. So if we move to the next slide, the UN's call to action today is to say that every action that is taken to reduce food loss and waste matters. And I've tried to ask people to put their hands up, whether you're doing the research or you've helped with a reporting platform or you're a business who's measuring or taking action. It's going to take all of our little pieces of the puzzle to come together. And like a bring and braai, it's been said, I think, with these things, it is like a bring and braai. We need to all bring our parts to the table so that we can actually do this. And it's not going to take one of us, and I'm just representing a whole host of people in this presentation. You can hear how many people it takes. So, 2026 promises to be an impactful year. We're lighting the candles for the last 5 years, saying happy birthday to us. We've done a lot, but we need to do a lot more. So will you be with us over the next 5 years as we reach 2030? I'm sure you will, because some of you have been here for the last 10 and more. So you guys are in it for the long run and for the win. But essentially, our collective action today is going to lead to the transformation of this food system to be efficient, inclusive, resilient. There's all of these words we're using all of the time, but it's going to be about these bigger issues, better nutrition, a better environment, a better life for all of us, and leaving no one behind. And we say this, these are our calls, but we will do it because we're South Africans and we do things. And so just in closing to say thank you for being part of the transformation that you are seeing happen here, that you've been part of already, and for those that haven't come, you come to the table, join us, and if you do want to find out more, there's an email address there. And I do want to acknowledge RAP specifically and the funding that we received over the last year. A lot of these big changes over the last year have been due to the funding, and John Engelstrom is in the room. It's been amazing to have the strategic partnership of RAP, and you can see RAP details on the slide there too. So that's it. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. Very nice looking slides, by the way. I'm just saying myself. I'd like to call on a familiar face to many of you to facilitate our panel discussion and to introduce the panel members. It's our very own Sustainability Initiative Executive, Margaret Setati.
What a day. I remember shedding some tears here back then 5 years ago. Many of you know my story. Margaret Setati, I'm a child of a merchandiser. I grew up in an abundance of food. And this is because back then, food was able to be shared. There were no rules in place to say, dare you poison anyone or cause any harm to anyone. Everyone, including my father, would have been held liable if we were existing in this current setup that we have under the Consumer Protection Law. And we do recognize that that has really stopped a lot of people to feature as part of the people that are playing in terms of ensuring that they are out there, they are known that they're working on this. So that has always been my plight to say from the South African legislature, if we can look at that, there are systems in place where we can mitigate and know exactly who has done wrong, and we've done that with other systems. So I just wanted to utter that as my part of introduction, and thank you so much, Karen. We attended a GS1 regional forum, and they said we must embrace the agencies and give them platforms. They bring a little bit of a sway that we do not have. So thank you so much, Karen, for that. And I will introduce the panel, and we hope you to have amazing fun on the stage. And after the session, we will open up a few questions from the floor. We haven't been hearing from you, and we will take it as that. And the first one that we have, Prof. Mr. Kosen, to be with us. Isn't she amazing? She has really done this. What we need to do actually as part of food safety. Every time we sit with the team, and I'm like, what did we do that is exciting? So you have given us a huge laundry list of things that we can do. Thank you, and welcome. And Nicole Ross, my great board member, thank you so much for your support. And Tati Khawuja Mukwena, I think you're the only person, every time I say this, I say this with Tati Mukwena, from our great partner, the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. Just to procedure. And we got John Elioshep. I was saying, I thought I met John physically, but this is the first time that we meet him as part of the rep team, and truly appreciate all the time that he supports us. And we've got Dr. Tahira to be joining us. I wanted to take some time to practice the same, and Cynthia is looking at me like, don't mess it up. So even Dr. T. Can I take this out? All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. And as I've set the scene, I think everyone understands why this issue sits closely to my heart. I think sometimes they say you must find your passion and you'll never work a day in your life. Food safety, sustainability, food security, and food loss and waste. I just want to tell you, the panel members, to say, what is it that drives you to continue doing what you're doing in any space, be it food safety, sustainability, and the environmental side of things, food security, or food loss and waste? Is that we will be sharing.
First of all, can I say it's an absolute privilege to be here today and to be part of this event. So, I'm Elioshep. I'm the delivery manager for the International Food Programme for RAP. And my background is actually in industry, in the tech sector, and I'm a relatively late arrival into this whole mission to address food loss and waste. And the longer I spend in the sector, the more excited I get, actually, just by the passion and the skills of the people that I'm working with in South Africa, the fantastic team, that CGCSA and the initiative, but also I'm very lucky in that I get to talk with other packs as well, and so just to see how people are solving problems in South Africa, in Indonesia, in Brazil, and just how it is a solvable problem. I think, as was said this morning, it's a hugely complicated and challenging problem, but it's solvable if we work together. And so that's what gets me out of bed every morning. And it's just as you say, it doesn't feel like work. It's an absolute thrill and a joy to be working with people like yourselves and your team and people across the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. T, and thanks a lot to the CGS for the invitation to the department for participation in this seminar. Khawuja Mukwena is indicated in the Chemicals and Waste Policy Specialist Monitoring Services Chief Directorate of the department, on what keeps us going in this area. Maybe then to your point, Mr. Jadela, on the risk associated to it, giving out food, whether is food that is still before its expiry date or not. There's always questions around it and legalities around it. So it's not so long ago, a few years ago, I was approached by one of the colleagues in the sector who said, we've drafted this bill for it to be processed by a government so that it can ensure that when food is being made available, there's no risks associated to any of the donors or the food. So, and we appreciated the process as well as the initiative. But it's safe to say that key for us and for me is that we live in a world with finance resources. So sustainability is very important. So hence the link to the circular economy, because in a make and dispose in an economy, we are using those resources. Whereas in an efficient and resource efficient manner, we are able to keep the material and resources as long as possible in the value chain. And similarly, food is one of those, and hence the need for us to rethink in terms of how we manage and sharing these finite resources as a country. Thank you.
Thank you for a good question on top, because I think any hard work like this starts with purpose. So for me, I somehow have this thread of nourishing as a connectedness in my life. You said it, food is a lubricant, it's a connector. Found myself studying dietetics and now leading this amazing company across 23 Southern Eastern African countries. But now what keeps me going is that we cannot have nutrition status improve if we don't have safe food. So it's a public health mandate, it's a policy requirement for me. And secondly, if we don't nourish, we can't grow. And grow in every sense, grow in sense of self, grow talent, become a net exporter of talent as Africa to the world. Soon, about 2.5 billion of the 9 billion world population is going to be here on this continent. So if we are not nourishing them and growing them and being ready with safe practices to do that, then we're going to have a science. So mostly led by passion.
Thank you very much. Passion and people, and also having a great sense of really caring about people and making a difference. I think what's very important is that sometimes in life you realize that you've been privileged to be in a position where you can actually make a difference. You can touch people's lives, but you can also influence the discourse, and you can sit around the table and help navigate the future. So it's a privilege to train students to be part of their world, but it's also very important to represent your country or represent a science platform. And then you know you need to stand up. You need to stand up for science, you need to stand up for the people, and you must address inequality. And I feel personally it's my calling in life, and that's why I really care.
Afternoon. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to sit on stage in front of you and to share some of my thoughts. Probably just, paraphrase what my other panelists said. As a classically trained chemical engineer with the sort of basic goal to, make money as fast as possible and as efficiently as possible by optimizing process design, etc. And then to now where I am in sustainability, both in the environmental sphere, but also more in the socio-economic aspects. I think it comes down to impact, and that does sound a bit cliche, but whatever impact you have in whatever way you have. And then I think the second aspect that's quite important to me is to work on something that's relevant and topical. So whether I speak to someone today about plastic pollution and recycling, and then tomorrow about renewable energy and what's happening in the green hydrogen space, to overall, what are we eating today and what are we doing with what is left over, what not be consumed. That is very important to me. The fact that, and also, as a researcher and sort of amateur academic, to also speak about something that we can actually do as ordinary citizens and consumers, and not to sort of use the academic legalese and the lexicon as a sort of divider, but actually a way to sort of speak language. Thank you so much, and I like the element that you bring in today. It shouldn't just be science; it needs to be things that we can do. Now, if I bring that question to you at when we have the microphone, at a high level now, we do have the food loss and waste strategy from the National Department. What is next? What is the guidance that you are bringing to the people in the room? What is the support that is needed from the department in that place?
Thank you very much. We are busy developing the national waste management strategy for South Africa. Food loss and strategy that came into existence on the payment of August this year came as a part of our national responsibility strategy of 2020. So we have delivered on the strategy of food loss and actions in the country. But as we go into the review of the national responsibility strategy, one thing for reducing food loss and waste, what else? So key for us in the next 5 years, in the 2020 strategies aim or initiative was to develop the strategy. We now say let's implement it. In the next 5 years, we move on towards implementation of the strategy. And also through partnership and collaboration with other players or stakeholders. We are also part of the G20 Environment Sustainability Report. It's about 84% of waste, waste in the country. So you can imagine the opportunities that are to automate and manage our organic waste, which includes waste, a lot of opportunities from enterprise development and support, for instance, if we are to compose organic waste that we generate in about a third of our waste in the country, but also the reduction in the wastage of food. So it's interesting points that we are indicating and looking at as outcomes in the food loss and waste strategy for us to implement as a way of moving away from seeing, for instance, a different crop, a different potato as waste material, but to encourage customers and consumers to choose those if they are on a shelf. Because if it's a different potato on a shelf, you might not pick it from the especially where you weigh it for sale. But if the same different potato is processed in the form of a tomato sauce, it's not an ugly food or an ugly fruit, an ugly tomato, but it's nice and delicious and edible in a tomato sauce bottle. So we say let's price and raise awareness among the society as well as customers how to buy in a sustainable way, and at the same time contribute towards reducing food loss and food wastage. Those agri-food and agri-food will automatically find themselves in waste just because they are informed on some aspect cut, not necessarily they are of less or low to available, but just because of the way they do it.
Thank you so much. It's always appreciated that you work with us. You always give us your priorities because then that gives us the direction in terms of what we bring to the people. But with everything that we are doing, and that's a huge and bold strategy that we have, and with everything that we need to implement, it needs a whole lot of investment that needs to come with that. So maybe, John, if we go from your side, having worked in a collaborative way from a global perspective, what can countries or nations do to, garner the investment part of it so that we can get what is written on paper to be implemented?
Thanks, Martha. So it's an interesting time from my perspective in this whole sector. In that there's so we're actually celebrating 25 years since it was originally established in the UK, with food loss and waste as being at the heart of the mission to bring benefits to people and the climate and nature. And we've been sort of rattling on for many years to find out what works and what doesn't. And it's only quite recently that there's been new sources of funding beyond government support, because funders, philanthropic funders and others are seeing that this is a critical issue, it's a critical global issue. And so the particular program that we're working on at the moment with the Food Loss and Waste Initiative in South Africa is funded by the Volmer philanthropic group to fund the help partnerships in South Africa, but also in Indonesia and in Brazil and Mexico. I think that we are starting to see, and South Africa is actually a model within this program. I think that some things that Linda talked about, South Africa is starting to demonstrate how that kind of funding can have real impact at a national, a systemic level. And that's one of the reasons I'm here this week, is that to work with the team on the second year of work in South Africa, to really start to reap the benefits and reap the impact from the work that's been done to date. And so I think those case studies, those examples of what is possible, is what excites funders, it's what excites governments, it's what brings businesses on board as well. So I think it is I think people understand in principle that this is a big issue. What they want to see now is examples of success. And what we're now seeing is, I'm very excited to say that we're seeing now a pipeline of other funding possibilities coming along. So this initial funding runs to the end of 2026. But because of the success that's been demonstrated already, and we're anticipating we'll be able to show over the coming year, that we have other funding possibilities coming in from international funders, and the more we demonstrate to funders and also to businesses that this is a soluble problem, that food waste can be radically reduced, and it can be also overlap with issues such as food safety, that solutions which address food safety can also help dramatically reduce food loss and waste. Then we can see an accelerating momentum behind funders, both national, philanthropic level, but also individual businesses. So it's an exciting time. I'll say also just a couple of things. This week is the launching a new pact on Thursday in Brazil, which is really exciting. I'll try and pronounce it the Brazil Sem Desperaticio. My apologies if you speak Portuguese. And we're also, there's a new initiative with significant funding behind it in the US, which is launching, which is a national campaign over 5 years. The funding's there, the support's there. What people need is the proof that it's possible.
Thank you so much. And it's quite comforting because the words keep coming. It is possible to be done. And maybe, Nicole, if we bring you in from a business perspective, we know that this takes a lot of resources. And in most cases, people might say, we are all just talking about it, but does business see value in the changes that we are doing in terms of implementing your food safety systems, implementing your food loss and waste strategies internally? Because in most cases, we sit around the room and we're like, are we really even making sense to the business? And to John's case, the business cases that we are building, they need to talk to the businesses. What would be the message that you would share to someone that is still sitting on the sideline and saying, I need not focus on this, even though it is at that high, but does this even make any business sense?
Yeah, I mean, first it starts with the actual business point, right? I mean, in the end, we're in business ultimately to make money. So when we can eradicate waste and we can do it at scale, we can redirect those investments to create more skills, to grow people, to allow for foreign direct investment, which is really what we're currently driving in the B20 and G20 agenda. So absolutely there is a business case. Are we seeing in our business? Yes. I speak of a company of one. We have to get more on waste inside our company, and because we need efficiency to be able to grow and create jobs, which of course is present in this call on big business. That's point one. So does it make business sense? Absolutely. Are we starting to see an impact? Yes. Is it complex? Absolutely. And I think a bit to MEC's point earlier about just instituting a ban. Well, that's great, but we have 10 million tons of problem. So by banning it tomorrow, we are still not yet at the bottom of the problem. So I think we are investing heavily in resources, and Prof, you said it, on prevention, on understanding these complex problems, on using data, on leveraging AI to solve these very, very complex problems. Is there a business case there again? Yes, absolutely there is. So I think whichever way you look at it, the problem is complex, there's definitely a business case, and more importantly, we need skills to close that. Perhaps just a final thought, as we move towards election, I think the panel alone is already for me, a win today, because we've got multi-stakeholders, we're driving private partnerships, we need academia to bring us data that we can act on, we need to be less emotional on the topic, more factually led, and I think today is already indeed a win. And I owe you a thank you, because you educated me on several topics as well. We are making progress on measurement. You have to remind me, as a member of the Consumer Goods Council, it is quite sad that only 59 of us in that enormous group are reporting. So if you're in the audience today and you're not reporting and you're not sharing your data, please help us. That would be an important first step so that we can get follow back at the end to see how we can solve these problems. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And it was the comforting part. This is why we have the TSC and TFE. They said, create your own sandbox. We do not want to regulate you now to the aspect and calls for a ban, because it takes a lot. And just to share, we celebrate the small wins. When someone says, I didn't realize things from the floor are actually waste. So it's all of those small details that come. But Prof, I want to bring us to the food safety side. And I like what you said, that we are always taken as the stepchild. And we all know if things go wrong from a food safety perspective, what could be. And another aspect that we need to bring in is the data that you touched on, from either a local perspective, so that we can have, the intel, the insights for the west of the West Heaven. And one day, if I can share a story, I asked one of the members to say, we all are doing testing, and I think you actually recall the massive number of tests that you're doing. Why are we not having visibility of this data? So, unpack, why is it so difficult for data to be shared, especially from a food safety perspective? Why are we withholding all this data to ourselves when it can really help us so much?
Yes, so data is also about lawsuits, and that's what we saw during Mysteriosis. So we knew a lot of laboratories had data, but data has to be fair. And there's this global move towards fair data. So it is about interoperable data. Can I compare my data with another laboratory's data? The same methods? Were they, I'm not even talking about the predators or that's a data problem. Yeah. Because research laboratories, they're not accredited. And years ago, I tried to get my labs accredited. We were for 6 years. And then I gave up because the training component of it was too heavy, because you have to almost start from scratch. But it's important in this that I realized that I couldn't really compare my data with that of a lot of other laboratories in retail, for instance, or the processing sectors. So it's almost a lost opportunity. what people are now doing is saying, well, retain your data. Let's look at data infrastructure that's shareable. They actually talk about train stations. So you stay in control of your data, but the other research groups, or then if it's a global outbreak, government can then go and visit all the state data points and then utilize that for prediction or for surveillance or control, because we must share data. But it has to be fair, the whole process of fair data. So that's the first thing. So I know, for instance, and Dr. Thomas Mchenga sitting in the audience, he did an amazing PhD looking at PPCB's data of pesticide residue levels in all this exported produce for 6 years. That's an incredible database. The wealth of information that he could unlock by analysing that was incredible, because it showed that South Africa is the second most compliant in the world in terms of export produce. But that picture of compliance was not necessarily the case in the country, in-house, or in with imported food. But that's valuable, and that's making data accessible for the national benefit. And just think that if we had access, if government had access to all the laboratories and during the listeriosis whole situation, would we not have been able to save a few lives? So, first of all, I think it's a very important conversation, but there has to be rules and regulations. We are talking about how can we best share data. And I think it's data from the farm to the consumer. There's a lot of data captured in terms of losses in field. And I'm not always sure if that's captured in a lot of the waste and loss statistics we see. The seeds that did not germinate, the soil that was too poor to sustain growth, impact of climate on your yields, the losses because of poor quality or disease or pests, harvested fruit that was dropping in the field. So it's a better understanding of that whole food chain, because everywhere there's data captured, and I'm afraid that pre-harvest bit, the on-farm harvest, that data is not always included everywhere. So just getting access to farmers' data, for instance, or growers' associations data. So we must all agree that we're going to enter that space and share our data, blockchain. And I believe that's the most important part. But then I want to take it to a personal level. At home, how much food do you keep in your fridge? How much food do you waste or dump? Do you separate your food? So it's also that information at home. And then the personal responsibility. I take responsibility in a personal capacity of reducing waste? And I want to take responsibility, which is maybe a difficult thing. How much food do we not eat that's on your plate? So we're going to have lunch just now, so we can look at each other's plates. And I always do that. When I sit on the table, I look at what people dish up, and I look at how much they dish up, and then I look at what they're not eating. And that data is, to me, a very important part of the picture.
Very, very, very. That's already a call to action when we go for lunch. I carry my camera in all the events that we have. They know Madro is watching. So at least today, Prof is watching. And it's really amazing. Like I say, it's the little things that you do, the small steps that you take, just like being on the side of the scene so that each and every member of the household can see. As much as we expect, we also need to do all of those strides. And bringing it now back again, Dr. Taylor, to now as I'm sitting here, I'm realizing CEO, I think the FSSS mandate is quite broad. Maybe we might need more people to join, because food safety, there's food security, there's food loss and waste. And now if we bring it to the issues pertaining to your waste, your general waste, in terms of the extended producer responsibility, that we have, Dr. Taylor. Just bring us in your space in terms of how far are we as South Africa, especially on determining the life cycle assessments, how much is it costing the organizations to do all of those determinations, and how can we best collaborate to ensure that we support the sector in those critical conversations, including eco-labeling that needs to be happening as per the required regulations.
Thanks, Nadlo. Complicated question and also somewhat controversial, I think, considering LCAs is a somewhat blasphemous word in some circles. But nevertheless, I'm going to start with, I think, EPR and LCA. On the EPR sort of guidelines, if you looked at, for example, 2020 and then it was amended in 2021, the regulations, LCA was quite possibly an standardized cycle assessment before in the environmental. So it's an industrial ecology tool that can be used to quantitatively predict or estimate the impact of a product or service along its life cycle. Short, simplistic definition. We do have 9 notices that are associated with that. The one that is possibly most pertinent in this particular space would be the one that pertains to packaging, so whether that's plastic, paper, metal, and some else as well. The mandate that was given by the department with the regulation, and I'm sort of paraphrasing from what mentioned in relation to LCA, was the reason why it's listed as a requirement for every brand owner and producer to conduct is for basically to pinpoint environmental hotspots to see how we could reduce the volume of, I mean, it says downstream basically, but I would also say upstream, environmental hotspots, and then also toxicity of these streams, and then perhaps suggest any alternatives if they do sort of arise. So, for example, if
really poorly in terms of environmental performance, if you're going to suggest, for example,
the CSIR has developed a life cycle assessment guideline series, and this is with the intent so that, for example, if I have a set of data and everyone in this room has a set of data, we don't end up with 100 life cycle assessments and 100 models that differ substantially. We want to come closer to a harmonized, representative, relevant model that can all guess. So, for example, when I'm talking about my previous example, if I have a plastic carrier bag and I have a cotton bag, and if these were conducted by a couple of different producers, we don't end up with data that is questionable and that is not credible. And so as phase 2 of that particular project, what we're doing now is we're actually testing those kind of guidelines with the PRO to see exactly how credible, how relevant, how representative those are. And that's in terms of the LCA front. On the eco-labeling, I'm going to try and be a bit quick. Eco-labels, I think, mean different things to different people. So the one perhaps in this context would be food and some sort of guideline regarding consumption. There's also your OPRLs, which are your on-package recycling labels. So that's with respect to packaging. For example, when I'm done eating, whenever I'm done, what do I do with the outer packaging, whether that's secondary or tertiary. And then the third sort of labels that you may or may not be aware of is to do with sustainability, but perhaps more the socio-economic lens would be, for example, you might have seen something like fair trade, sustainably farmed. And again, I actually did a bit of research of my own where I got the panel questions. So there was a piece actually published back in the conversation where they sort of surveyed 100 South African consumers, so that's individuals like you and I. And the consensus was that we're not actually sure, first of all, what these mean, more importantly, whether these are credible. There's a lot of, in that particular survey, and sure, it's a small past survey group. But it's interesting, the results mention that a lot of them where we thought, or where the sort of surveillance were questioned, and where they said, these are valid, these are credible. They were actually fictional labels, and some that actually, rooted in reality that are verified. Some of the respondents actually weren't 100% sure regarding their veracity. So I think that speaks to, again, visibility, that speaks to support, and not just awareness, but education. It's one thing to be aware, it's another thing to actually be educated and understand where exactly it is coming from. Thanks. Sorry, really long answer to a short question.
It is a long question, and I just thought about it as I was asking that, and I think this brings us so that we allow the time for the questions from the floor. And I think Dr. T, you summed it up so well, because as all the speakers were presenting throughout the day, people, consumers to the ground has always been the theme that was coming up for me. To say, with all this knowledge that we have, with all the systems that we have, with all the policies that we have and the regulations, are we sure that we are taking everyone with us in the essence of the sustainable development goals? Are we leaving other people behind? So this compels us to say, what about the consumers? What about the informal sector that we've heard about today? So in closing, possibly I could ask each of the panel to say, what is really your key takeout from this, and also your call to action to the rest of the people that are with us today in line with what we have discussed? I'll hand over to you. John.
Thanks, Ms. Locke. My key takeaway for me really is just the commitment that's in the room, and the breadth of skills and experience being brought, and really just an excitement about the years to come, actually, in South Africa. And I think the call to action, I'll actually repeat what has been already said. I think for businesses, the data reporting is a critical piece. Just understanding data, where food waste is happening in operations. So the more data that can be submitted in, if your members, the more insights into change and how that can inform transformation across the system, the more effective and the more rapid change can be. So I think that my call to action is, as I said before, is participate as businesses and share data and share best practice across the network.
Thank you very much, Director, for the question. Maybe a key for me, dealing on what MEC alluded to earlier on, the issue of dealing with hunger and addressing the issues of challenges of unemployment in the country, as it is one of the priorities currently. Hence, with socioeconomic aspects to food waste reduction, in the strategy we are emphasizing the beneficiation aspect, where you can create jobs, you can start SMEs or enterprises on a number of solutions, opportunities that are there, depending on the type of food you are looking at and are working on. We have examples in our bilateral engagements with Denmark Technology University, where canteen, they are using that food waste into making beer from food waste in their canteen. It's small scale, but something that can be also replicated at large scale. Circular economy opportunities are there, and hence my mentioning made of the G20 initiative. In another priority on oceans and coasts, we have initiatives that strong to circularity in the use of fishing gear, as it has plastics largely in it, to manufacture products from it, as opposed to, and instead of leaving it contribute to marine pollution and plastics litter and the challenges that end up in our stomach, unfortunately, through us eating the fish or food from the oceans. So here to add some of the initiatives in the fishery space is opportunities as well in the, making use of the waste from fisheries, for instance, in manufacturing animal feed. Similarly, we see challenges and threats such as foot and mouth diseases, which affect largely the head as well as the feet on the cows. But if you cut those off from the affected animals, you have again meat that can be used in the manufacturing or production of animal feed. On implementing the definition of waste in 2014 when it came into effect, our colleagues from agriculture were a bit concerned to say, with the recent developments, you're depriving us of an opportunity to make use of blood as a byproduct to use again for beneficiation processes, because those are some of the byproducts in an aperture facility that still needs to be reused and can be reused for other purposes. In our shelves on the refrigeration sections in a number of stores, we find a lot of such products which traditionally previously would be seen as waste from abattoirs, but now they are on the fridges. We buy them because they are edible and they are food. And lastly, we have recently learned with the threats posed by plastics and marine pollution and litter. Introduced the proposed regulation for prohibition of microbeads in products. We're saying prohibition of microbeads in products because they can be in any environment. It might not be only in the packaging, but sometimes in pesticides and other products that we apply on our faces for beautification, and hence the regulations are calling for prohibition of those. I saw some skepticism around the bans, but in Singapore, it is illegal to throw away a chewing gum on the street. So some regulatory mechanisms, as well as bylaws, will work in discouraging certain behaviors. What can be done if we were to collect that and reuse for one purpose or the other? Thank you very much.
I think the panel made already great points. I think I would just take out probably for me today, McLeod, is collaboration. I don't think there's a lack of will. We understand the extent of the problem. I think every speaker has highlighted that today. So we need the leadership. So I think a lot of credit to the Consumer Goods Council for the way that you're orchestrating us and collecting, like-minded individuals to come behind this complex problem. I have no doubt with the strong leadership. I think Prof. you said it, right? We are a very talented leadership environment here in South Africa and Africa at large. We will solve the problem. I happen to agree. I don't know that the funding and the money part is necessarily the barrier. For me, it's the coordination and how to channel the funding and the efforts. Finally, I still have a vision eventually that we will have one common date mechanism that we can all use on our products, that our shoppers and consumers can all understand, and that in turn, that alone would dramatically reduce the amount of waste. And I fully agree with your point that what might be waste, perhaps for an essay value chain, might be an input for another downstream value chain. And if we are able to coordinate better, we already can make each other grow and create jobs, which is in the end our mission. Thank you, Mike.
I want to say, let's start with the water challenge. Let's sort it out. Let's have open, frank, honest discussions about our water quality, because we can't start food safety discussions unless we've addressed that. I also believe that we also maybe need to talk about food safety. I was looking at product recall, and I think that's maybe important conversations to have. We haven't really spoken about that today. The food loss and waste in terms of that whole product recall process and the implications of it and the justification of that. So I think we need to rethink it a little bit in the context of an incredible amount of food waste and losses we have. And then I really feel strongly we must break down the silos. We really have to increase approach. And we must sort of, and that's why I applaud this meeting. I think it's fantastic because you're taking the lead. But I think it's important to include all and really focus a little bit on maybe not including people, perhaps by not knowing. I was looking at one of the slides and I thought we have a whole post-harvest team. And all they do is they look at all the losses from the field in the post-harvest phase, and we're not part of that. And I thought that's a big mistake. We must be part of it. And then I think education is so important. You know, we must cultivate food respect. And it starts at school. It starts actually with you as an individual. And it goes to your home. You know, what you do around the table. Are you having these conversations with your children? Teaching them how to respect food. And then at school level, are we doing enough? Are we engaging the educators? I can tell you I was a house mother for residents for 10 years. And the students knew if I walked in and they first of all, what I thought was junk food, they were hiding it. And they said, oh, no, we're going to buy apples now. So appreciation and understanding and engaging within their whole educational sector. And then I think it's important to unite to fight food waste and losses. Thank you.
Thanks. I think those were great responses by some of the panelists. I'm just going to mention 2 points quickly. First of all, I think we need a change in realization and mindset related to it. Mentioned systems thinking. The recognition that problems that often originate downstream sometimes actually have their origins upstream. So instead of, I won't say instead of, but I would say in addition to, for example, solving your end-of-life issues, also looking at process, design, things, so that your processes, your systems, your packaging, etc., can be designed to, for example, be reusable, to, for an extended shelf and so forth. The second point is just to sort of piggyback on what Nicole mentioned. I think we do need sustainable platforms to connect. Conferences, workshops, and the like, they take a great deal of organization, they take a lot of effort, they take a lot of finance. But tomorrow when I'm going back to my day job, well, this is also part of my day job, but when I'm going back to my daily sort of routine basis, and if a farmer, small scale farmer comes up to me, and that has happened 2 weeks ago, with a particular issue, how or what platform or how do I know to, for example, contact an industry representative? How do I know who is the relevant researcher to assist with where the cutting edge research is? How do I know where the perhaps NGOs or whoever's in the civil society who's actually or perhaps grappling with a similar problem? How do I connect these people so that it doesn't become a sort of insurmountable problem that one particular organization seemingly thinks they're grappling with, but if perhaps it is a greater challenge that those in not just a particular sector, but different sectors have actually experienced. And that's what I'd like to see going forward. So not a solution, but more something I'd like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it on? Okay. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it, and Andre, just amazing. Just a round of applause for I must say, you closed it off very nicely, Dr. Taira, and this is the comfort that we get. It gives us direction as we go into next year's planning to say, what are the actions? I think this year I even wrote in my little book to say, there shouldn't be too much talking going forward. We need action, and it gives us great comfort to see these results coming. For people having action plans, and we realize that some people are still struggling with putting together a food loss and waste strategy as part of their food safety schemes that they have to get certified on. And we say the initiatives are there, they are open, and we are fortunate that at this point we were able, through the funding that we're getting from REP, to open it up to everyone and not just the CGCSA members. So it is open to everyone. We will be reaching out to the rest of the organizations as identified by research, so that we can get the necessary people to move the needle. And truly appreciate Nicole, you're going to be our champion. And that was a great message to say, why is there a less number of the CDC representatives? That's the message that we want to drive to the highest levels, to say, let's come together. It is a free sandbox for us to come and play, and we can do this. In the words, I think it was said, let's unite and fight the silent crisis, because we shouldn't be having more people going hungry on the day when we have sufficient food. And on that note, let me open it to the floor for any questions. This is the end. This is the only time where I get to finally eat. It has been a stressful period, and much appreciation to the organization and the team for putting this together. Thank you so much. I will hand over to the team if there are any questions, and then we can take them. And kindly will guide us with the time as to how we are doing. Thank you. Any questions from the floor?
Thank you, everybody. The panelist was incredible. I hung on every single word that you actually discussed today. My question is to you, Nicole. Firstly, I commend you on your leadership on this topic. And I fully agree that what gets measured gets managed. But if I have to ask a question, if you look at all the leaders within SSA, what was the one thing that was the catalyst or the game-changing lever that helped you reduce waste?
So firstly, we measure it. My team knows we measure waste in every part of the value chain. So I want to know from the beginning, where are we buying, how much did we buy, how much, to your point, was wasted? Why couldn't we use it? When we did use it, we made too much. It's like baking a cake, right? If you buy all the ingredients and then you waste it, you pour it on the counter, someone's landing on the floor, in the end, that's not, of course, sufficient. So measure, 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 everywhere in the value chain. I think that helped us a lot. The second is, once we then knew where we were wasteful, it actually became energizing for the team to go and find ways to save, and very fulfilling. For example, when we're on the farm and we're doing early morning milk collection, and we're there with the farm, and we're able to show that through more efficient collection, we can actually benefit not only the farm, the farmer's P&L, and of course give back to nature in a really regenerative way. So measure, measure, measure. The second thing I would add is that proper diagnostic of the problem, and I think you said it so eloquently, is that if we are not clear on the problem definition up front, then we can't solve for the problem. So our teams are often on the surface of the problems, trying to band-aid those issues, versus going very deep, either into the structural problems of what's causing the bad waste, etc., etc. And then the third one, I would just compliment Anne, I'm sure anyone in complex organizations, is the complexity trips us up big time. So if we are not ruthless with our portfolios, lean in our value chains, we are just creating undue waste. So I would say those three things: measure, 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 really astute diagnostics. And here I think South African skill set is very strong. We've got outstanding engineering skills to help us get to the bottom of problems. Maybe we could do with a few more. Maybe we could do with a few more female ones, ideally. And then the last one would be complexity, manage your complexity, and sometimes better to say no to a few things so that you can do what you keep really well. I hope that helps.
That sums it up for us, and you just reminded me of the key words that we use as we sign up from a REM perspective. We say target, measure, and act. Thank you so much.
very much. Thank you very much for facilitating. Thank you very much for expertly facilitating that, Matlo. I had a little something prepared, but I think for the sake of time, I will just call up Zinhle Tigwe, the CEO of CGCSA, to round out the event and take us into lunch.
Thank you, Kaylan, and thank you everybody for being here. Today has been really an exciting day for me, I must just say. The audience has been wonderful. The speakers, the panel has been wonderful. We all have had a fruitful day. And with that, I just want to appreciate your time, and the valuable insights that you have had today. Thank you, Professor. Thanks for your abstention. As we conclude today's seminar with our theme, safe food, sustainable future. We need to reflect on the progress that we have made and the challenges that we still need that we face in us. Today we had that food loss and waste complex issues. But also we had that we need to resolve these complex issues with simple steps that we can do ourselves in our homes, in our environment. So complex issues have really simple resolution and solutions. So what this needs is our collective action as we're all sitting here, our collaborative nature to solve these issues. We also had that we need to look at this complex problem in a macro manner. Macro, I mean, look at what we do in our homes. We had that professor told us. Look at each other's face. So determine the practical efforts that we can do to ease the waste. But also, these are really impactful measures. Today, we shared knowledge, ideas, best practices that inspire action. We had everybody, we had Matlo saying that we need to have a call of action and try change. Let's not wait today be one of those days that we are just talking, we leave here, we haven't had any program of action where it's just a seminar, we forget it, we remember it again next year, 2026. Let's be different. We have had 5 years into this, as you all know, as an organization. And then we have practical and empirical data that we have developed. And we want to share with you as we are moving, but also we want you as our members and the stakeholders, share the reports Nicole talked about to say we really need to have more signatories, more people reporting, so that we can really show from an industry perspective. We tend to take these type of programs as organizations as competitive edge. They are not. You are fooling yourself. If you bring in this town and go to market and say, this is what I've done, your impact is not going to be visible. But if you come together as a sector, that's when you're going to see the value and the impact that your organization has done. I don't know, I'm not looking at you. But today, that's what we shared, and that's what I'm going to take away today. And please, I mean, Nicole knows we always need to say to the board, we need data. The members need to start sharing with us their programs, share with us their solutions. What has its impact? What does it look like? What was it before? Because then if as an industry, we can show this. It makes it so more impactful to say this sector, which, you know, I always say this, we had a Milaba this year, and one of the speakers said, we deal with bread and butter issues, life and death issues in this sector. People die if they don't eat proper food. People die if they don't have food. So we really deal with these issues that are really, really important. So we cannot take that as a commodity organization. We need to look at it as a your role, as your call to action, or there's something that you need to be passionate about. I'm feeding South Africans. So that's what we always say. So my key takeaways for today, we all know that food loss and waste have significant economic, social, and environmental impact. What implementable steps can we take to have a positive impact on these social-economic issues that we are dealing with? We had also that collaborative effort for us as individuals, organizations, and government. So join us in our effort as we try to resolve these issues. Come, if you haven't signed up, please sign up. It's free for now until life decides otherwise, so there's no cost. Every effort counts, every action counts, from our homes to implementing sustainable practices in our industries, and government providing enabling regulatory environment, because we know policy direction. We had the NEC today with clearer policy direction that enables, that is not designed to provide further hindrance. It's how we enable growth and we reduce food loss and waste. To let our government departments develop policies that are designed for growth, align themselves among the other align themselves among government departments, and not create hindrances through I don't know what I wrote through additional levies that are not geared for impact. I heard the MEC saying there's penalties, there's also rewards that can be created. So let's look at rewards rather than payment. So my call for action today, let's plan our meals, as the prof said, let's shop wise. I need to learn that myself. I'm a really bad shopper, and use our leftovers. Let's buy local and support our organization working to reduce food loss and waste. And raise awareness and share tips. Join us, the CGCSA, join our movement, join our voluntary agreement. And let's thank our members, thank you all of you. Thank the NEC and the government officials that are here and that as well. Nicole, in her absentia, and Professor, please thank you. Our members and stakeholders, our executive committee members from FSSI, thank you. To REF UK, thank you, John, for coming through and for trusting us and supporting us. To the team, the CGCSA team, thank you for this amazing seminar today and going beyond the call of duty. And we have the NEC, and this is my key takeaways from what the NEC said today. Policy and legislation that they must use modernized, smart policy and before food waste is lost. Strengthening collaboration and scale programs that are initiating for food recovery and distribution. Government coordination, reduce duplication and efforts, and share data. I mean, government wants to share data. We want data so that we can share with government, so that they can see the impact that we're doing. Also, she talked about root cause for food waste and loss and storage. What are we doing for that? With that, I think I'm going to end here and just say, next year we are having the same event again. Please come through and support us. Next year, Linda, we're going to be showing, Nicole, we're going to be showing the impact that our members have done. They are reporting. We saw earlier on Linda showing that we have developed a system that our members are reporting on. We are part of the REP coalition, Global Pact, and we as South Africa are living in. I think Nicole said too, we had one strategic session. Our problem as South Africans, we want to be the best, we want to be the first, But then our first doesn't really come with action. Our best doesn't really come with action. Can we we have the best policies, can we really then now start being impactful and do this? Our country needs us, our children are not getting food. And to meet this country better than we have we found it. With that, thank you so much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the networking session as well as the lunch that you've prepared. Small. Don't dish too much. If you dish too much, finish your plate. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Helen. We still have another program that we are doing, so don't leave yet. Thank you. And just as a final, before we wait for lunch, as we all know, the CGCSA as a platform for collaboration and action. We have put together a CGCSA PRO. We currently have the kindness of the board that said we support what you're doing. Go ahead and start actioning the way so that we can learn. We're learning so much. And in the presence today, we've got service providers that we have appointed as part of the people that are going to be on the ground to help us get the waste from the environment. So we have a few grants that CEO through the board have said, give to the people and let the people do the action, because we are really guided by action. So today CEO will be handing over the grants, and next year we will be give you feedback as to how we have done. Now we are really trying our best in that area. We currently have 7 members, and we are growing stronger and we are learning more. And CEO, if you could come to the front, and Tando will be helping you call out the names of the people that are present today.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. The first person we're calling is Joseph Duve from Data Waste Management Co-op. Ken Zoda Moslavi from KOK Waste Management. Can John Kalman from Urban Service join us, please? We have the other service providers to join us who will be accepting on their behalf. It's the Purple Group, K1 Foundation APC, and London.
Thank you, Tando. I think these are grants for 150,000 each of these partners that we are working with from a PRO perspective. So we want to see impact, we want to see reports. We don't want to see on paper on the ground. We don't want to see waste. You know, the reason why the PRO was set up from a CGCSA perspective was that, Dr. Mukwena knows how many PROs are there in this country. Okay, like they were 45 at that time, now they are over 60. But members said we still see waste, our brands are still out there on the ground, being thrown all over the place, but we are paying these levies. So if it comes to the CGCSA, we know that we govern it, the governance structures are in place, members, CEOs sitting on and see the actual impact. So that's why these here are the ones that please don't appear or they're not. Thank you so much. They will come CEO, who will showcase the work. And on that line, we are going to be in the Cape Town area. We are going to work with Plant the Seed, and much appreciation to one of the members that have declared in this year. This is Honor, the cell phone company. They are part of the campaign that we will be running so that the packaging material that they have declared, we get several schools in Cape Town to collect that material, and the best school will be winning an honor tablet and also a 10,000 cash injection to their school. So this is our effort to say, when we work with the brands, we are going to also give them, the opportunity to showcase that they are playing a role in terms of waste management. So we are truly excited about that, and going forward, and as we've always been, we are all about action, 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 measure, 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 as Nicole has said, and provide the impact. And in that light, before we go for lunch, the room will be available to us up until 3 to come and network and finish the rest of the snacks that they will have until 3, those who want to stay behind for lunch. And the final notice that the name tags, we've been using this for 5 years. Please, there's a recycling bin outside. Just leave them with us so we continue with that reuse, recycle, and repurpose and all the other apps that we can find. So humble appreciation to tickets. Your meal tickets are issued where? Just as we go out, and lunch is served on we go back inside into the hotel. Oh yes, CEO, much critical important thing. We are hosting the big event. If you are not there, I don't know in which sector you're operating. The CGCSA Summit is happening on the 8th of October. We are looking forward to seeing you there, bigger and better as always at the Vodacom World. We had to be bigger and then grow the space. More people will be exhibiting this year, so looking forward to seeing you there. That will be our final sign out for the year, and truly appreciation of your time today. Thank you so much. Let's enjoy lunch.
This is not the greatest, but this captures.
I can't breathe without my phone. So just no, you just talk about like and then just one day. I am therapy. I told